The morning began like any other, but before the sun would set, one simple act of kindness would change two lives forever. A poor maid's daughter stepped onto a crowded city bus with only a few coins in her hand, already worrying about how she and her mother would survive the rest of the week. She never imagined that spending those last coins on a helpless old woman would lead to a discovery that would leave an entire city speechless. What happened next proved that kindness never disappears, it always finds its way back, often in ways no one could ever imagine. Before we continue, if you truly believe that kindness still exists, that second chances can change lives, and that even the smallest good deed can create miracles, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with your friends and family, and subscribe to the Kindness Speaks channel. Your support helps us bring more inspiring stories that remind the world compassion still matters. On the edge of the city stood a tiny, weather-beaten house with cracked walls, a leaking roof, and a rusty gate that barely remained attached to its hinges. It was home to 16-year-old Emily and her mother, Martha, who worked as a housemaid in one of the wealthiest neighborhoods. Every morning before sunrise, Martha quietly left home carrying an old cloth bag filled with cleaning supplies. Her hands had become rough from years of scrubbing floors and washing dishes, yet she never complained because every blister reminded her that her daughter still had a chance to dream. Emily understood sacrifice better than most adults. She watched her mother skip meals so she could eat. She watched her repair worn-out shoes with glue because buying new ones meant losing grocery money. Every evening, after returning from school, Emily studied under a flickering lamp while helping her mother cook simple dinners made from rice, lentils, or whatever vegetables they could afford at the local market. They had little, but they never allowed bitterness to enter their home. Martha always repeated one lesson that had been passed down from her own mother. She believed that poverty could take away comfort, but it should never steal kindness. She reminded Emily that people remembered generous hearts far longer than expensive clothes or luxurious houses. Emily listened carefully every single day because those words became the foundation of her character. Life, however, seemed determined to test that belief. Bills continued piling up. Rent increased. Food prices rose. Martha developed constant back pain from carrying heavy buckets and standing for endless hours. Yet she refused to quit because Emily's education represented the future she herself had never received. One rainy Monday morning, Martha woke with a high fever. She tried to stand but collapsed beside her bed. Emily immediately realized that her mother could not work that day. Missing work meant losing wages they desperately needed. The landlord had already warned them that another late payment would force them out of the house. Emily looked inside the small kitchen cabinet and counted every coin they possessed. After separating enough money for a loaf of bread and a little milk, only a tiny amount remained, just enough for her bus fare to school. Walking would take nearly 2 hours, making her late for an important scholarship examination that could determine her future. She kissed her mother's forehead, promised everything would be all right, and left carrying both hope and fear in equal measure. The city bus arrived already overflowing with passengers. Office workers, students, laborers, and elderly citizens squeezed together as the driver continued accepting more people. Emily carefully protected the few coins in her pocket because they represented everything she had for that day. Several stops later, an elderly woman wearing a simple gray coat climbed aboard. Her white hair was neatly tied back, and although her clothes looked clean, nothing about her suggested wealth. She appeared tired and fragile, leaning on a wooden walking stick as she searched for support. The conductor requested her fare. The old woman reached into her handbag, searching again and again. Her expression slowly changed from calm to worried. She emptied every pocket, opened every zipper, and finally whispered that her purse had been stolen somewhere in the busy market. Some passengers rolled their eyes. Others looked away. A few quietly complained that people invented such stories every day to avoid paying. The conductor insisted she either pay immediately or leave the bus. The elderly woman's shoulders trembled. She looked embarrassed rather than angry. At her age, standing alone in the rain with nowhere to go felt heartbreaking. Emily watched silently. She touched the few coins in her pocket. If she paid the fare, she would have no money left for herself. If she kept quiet, she would reach school on time. For a brief moment, fear whispered louder than kindness. Then she remembered her mother's words. Without hesitation, Emily walked forward and handed her own bus fare to the conductor. She smiled gently and requested that it cover the elderly woman's ticket instead. The conductor accepted the payment. Some passengers stared in disbelief. Others shook their heads, believing the girl had made a foolish decision. Emily simply moved toward the back of the bus, now knowing she would have to walk several kilometers after getting off because she no longer had enough money for another connecting bus. The elderly woman slowly approached Emily and sat beside her. Although no formal conversation followed, the old woman silently observed the girl's worn school uniform, carefully stitched backpack, and tired eyes that still carried hope. She noticed kindness that expected absolutely nothing in return. When Emily reached her stop, she smiled respectfully at the elderly woman before stepping off into the pouring rain. She walked for nearly an hour. Her shoes became soaked. Her stomach growled from hunger. Yet she never regretted her decision. By the time she reached school, the scholarship examination had already begun. Her teacher looked disappointed but allowed her to enter because she had always been one of the most hardworking students. Emily completed the examination despite exhaustion and hunger. She returned home that evening to find her mother's fever worsening. Their small savings disappeared into medicine expenses over the next few days. Life continued exactly as before. Nothing miraculous happened. No mysterious visitor appeared. No reward arrived. Weeks passed. Emily almost forgot about the elderly woman. Meanwhile, across the city, the old woman quietly investigated the young girl who had paid her fare. She was not an ordinary grandmother. Her real name was Eleanor Whitmore, founder of one of the country's largest business empires. She was a billionaire known publicly for her investments and privately for her charitable foundation. She often traveled without luxury or security because she believed wealth had hidden people's true nature from her. Disguised in ordinary clothing, she observed how strangers treated those who appeared powerless. That rainy morning had been another one of those journeys. Her purse truly had been stolen. But the kindness she witnessed had become something she could not forget. Her private investigators eventually located Emily and discovered the heartbreaking truth. They learned about Martha's exhausting work, unpaid medical bills, overdue rent, and Emily's struggle to continue studying despite overwhelming poverty. Eleanor read every report personally. The deeper she looked, the more she realized that Emily had never helped others because she expected recognition. She simply believed kindness was the right thing to do. Eleanor decided that such a heart deserved an extraordinary response. One bright Saturday morning, several luxury vehicles quietly stopped outside Emily's tiny house. Neighbors gathered immediately, whispering endless guesses. Some believed government officials had arrived. Others assumed the family had done something wrong. Emily stepped outside, confused. From the first car emerged the same elderly woman from the bus. Only this time she wore an elegant suit. Behind her stood assistants, lawyers, and members of her charitable foundation. The entire neighborhood fell silent. Emily could barely recognize her. Eleanor smiled warmly and embraced the shocked teenager. Then, before dozens of stunned witnesses, she revealed her true identity. No one believed it. The maid's daughter who had spent her last bus fare on a stranger had unknowingly helped one of the richest women in the country. Tears filled Martha's eyes as she apologized for having nothing to offer their honored guest. Eleanor gently held Martha's hands and told her that she had already given the world something priceless by raising a daughter whose kindness remained untouched by poverty. Then came the surprise that no one expected. Eleanor announced that every educational expense for Emily would be covered through university and beyond. Their outstanding rent and medical bills were immediately paid. The old house would be renovated completely. Martha would receive financial security so she never needed to work as a maid again. Emily was also invited to become the youngest ambassador of Eleanor's charitable foundation, helping identify deserving students from poor families who needed opportunities rather than pity. The news spread rapidly across television, newspapers, and social media. Reporters arrived from every direction. People who had ignored Emily for years suddenly wanted interviews. Schools invited her to speak about compassion. Business leaders praised her honesty. Yet nothing about Emily changed. She continued visiting neighbors. She continued helping elderly people carry groceries. She continued tutoring younger children for free. Because kindness had never depended on money. Months later, Emily entered university without worrying about tuition for the first time in her life. Martha watched proudly from the audience during the orientation ceremony, remembering every painful sacrifice that had led them there. Eleanor stood quietly beside her. Neither woman needed many words. Both understood that one small decision on a crowded bus had rewritten an entire future. Emily eventually founded scholarship programs in memory of her mother, ensuring hardworking children from struggling families could continue their education. Thousands of lives changed because one teenager refused to ignore someone in need. The conductor who had witnessed everything often shared the story with new passengers, reminding them that they never truly knew who stood beside them. Sometimes the richest person wore the simplest clothes. Sometimes the poorest person possessed the richest heart. Years later, when journalists asked Eleanor why she trusted Emily with such enormous responsibility, she answered that fortunes could build buildings, but only character could build hope. Money could purchase comfort, but compassion created lasting change. Emily never forgot the rainy morning when she spent her last coins. She often smiled whenever she remembered how worried she had been about reaching school on time. At that moment, she believed she had lost something important. In reality, she had gained a future beyond imagination. Her story reminded millions that kindness is not measured by how much we give, but by what we choose to give when we have almost nothing ourselves. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, subscribe to Kindness Speaks, and let this message inspire more people around the world. Every interaction helps these meaningful stories reach hearts that may need encouragement. Before you leave, we have one special request. Please comment below with this sentence: kindness always comes back. Your words may inspire someone scrolling through the comments to never stop believing in compassion, even during life's hardest moments. Thank you for staying with us until the end. Remember, the smallest act of kindness may seem invisible today, but tomorrow it could become the miracle that changes someone's life forever.